Welcome to Data Protection Strategies Leveraging the Cloud. This four-part webcast series will provide you with valuable insights for ensuring your organization's data are protected and recoverable. As a reminder, the focus of this series is on your on-premises technology, not on your cloud-based technology. In episode 1, As a Service at Your Service, we talked about as-a-service strategies, including disaster recovery as a service and backup as a service, and the advantages this technology brings to you. In this episode, episode 2, Double-click into DRaaS, we will dive deeper into disaster recovery as a service and discuss options for the targets of your replication. In BaaS, Not Your Grandfather's Backup, we will examine backup as a service offerings and some of the considerations you will need to make when choosing a BaaS path. Finally, in Clear Expectations, we will guide you through some of the complexities of these solutions and how to set proper expectations with your business colleagues. So, let's double-click into DRaaS. In this episode, we are going to discuss some of the options available to you across 3 dimensions: recovery objectives, service options, and replication targets. But first, let's level set and answer the question, what exactly is DRaaS anyway? In the first episode of this series, we discussed 3 components that make DRaaS DRaaS. Replication, technology that provides continuous data protection as opposed to backups that provide point-in-time snapshots of your data. Cloud, the target of your replication is a cloud, either a hosted cloud or a public cloud like AWS or Azure. As a service, it's in the name. Now, I'd like to add a 4th component to this list. DRaaS not only provides you with target storage for your replication, but it also provides you with access to the infrastructure upon which to recover should you need it. Because of the cloud economics of DRaaS, you will only be paying a fraction of the cost for this infrastructure, if anything at all. I'd also like to level set on 2 more terms that are fundamental to disaster recovery. The first is RPO, Recovery Point Objective. Your recovery point objective is the time between the event causing the disruption and the first usable copy of your data. All data created between the event and that copy is lost. The recovery time objective, or RTO, is one of the most misused terms in disaster recovery circles. You know by now, I'm a stickler for words. In its purest sense, RTO is the amount of time between the event causing the disruption and when the application or applications are usable to conduct the business of the organization. Given the confusion in the market, InterVision speaks in terms of the true RTO. We will dive deeper into this in Clear Expectations. When we talk in terms of RPO and RTO across your application portfolio, we do not talk in terms of a one-size-fits-all solution. It is a balance of risk, value, and cost. The goal is to provide resilience to your business with the quickest RTO, the smallest RPO, as balanced against your tolerance for risk and the value of the data being protected. As you evaluate your applications, this will begin to create tiers of applications. You will have some that have little or no tolerance for data loss and availability. Others may be able to tolerate a day of lost data and a longer gap in availability. How you tier your applications will lead you to the type of technology that you will use to protect their data. There are four major types of protection. Active applications. For those applications with near zero tolerance for data loss or availability. Active infrastructure. Think of this as having hot standbys that can be online in seconds to minutes. Hypervisor replication. This tier is for those applications that have a low tolerance for data loss and must be available within 4 to 8 hours. Backups for recovery. These are applications that are important but have low transaction volumes and can sustain outages of up to 24 or 48 hours. This brings us to the as-a-service part of DRaaS. As I mentioned in the first webcast in this series, to truly fall under the as-a-service model, a DRaaS offering must include more than just a piece of software or an appliance. It has to be delivered as a service. The depth of the service can vary based on your needs and your budget. Think of the body of work that must be performed to establish, maintain, test, and update your disaster recovery architecture. The more of that work you can shift to the provider, the more time your team has available to work on other value-add projects. Service models for DRaaS fall into three main categories. Full service. The partner provides an end-to-end service covering the implementation and the tools to the iterative cycle of test and update. They are also there when you need to declare a disaster to perform much of the playbook the two of you have developed. Assisted service. The partner provides the implementation and the tools. Once replication is validated, they hand you the keys to take over operations and management while they tend to the target infrastructure. Of course, they are always there in the background should you need an assist. Self-service. The partner provides an automated way to set up your replication, manage and operate that replication, and fail over should you need it. The provider again manages the target infrastructure. Before we dive into replication targets and the pros and cons of the choices, let's review the primary drivers for choosing a DRaaS solution. With DRaaS, you have the infrastructure on which to restore your applications and data when you need to do so. Many organizations still rely on backups for their disaster recovery strategy. When they need to recover, they first have to procure, configure, and deploy the infrastructure on which to recover. This adds weeks and possibly months to the recovery time. Some organizations have a secondary data center. Many times that is where old hardware goes to die. The thinking is the organization will be okay running on low-performing or deprecated hardware during the failover period. This may be true when the failover period is a day or two. Beyond that, how much business will be lost because the staff can't keep up with the demand and their technology can't keep up with them? Some DRaaS providers will also sign service level agreements with you, in a sense guaranteeing recovery within the agreed to recovery time. This shifts some of the risk to the provider. Because of this shift, the provider will be proactive in ensuring you test your disaster recovery failover. This will give them, and more importantly you, the confidence that you can recover. As I mentioned above, based on the service options you choose, you will also be shifting the work to the provider. In a time when our businesses are demanding more and more from IT, this can be a great way to grow your team without additional headcount. The provider becomes an extension of your team, giving you valuable time to focus on initiatives that grow and transform the business. A driver we did not mention in the first episode is the ability to fail back. In other words, you've had an event. You've failed over all or part of your systems to your target data center or cloud. Now it is time to return operations to your home data center. DRaaS technology provides a seamless way of doing this by shifting the target of your replication to your home data center. Because of the nature of continuous data protection, once the replication reaches a steady state, you can fail back to your production data center. As you consider DRaaS, you have some choices when it comes to targets. A replication target is a cloud where you send your replication stream, your data, and it is also where you will recover when the need arises. As I mentioned, for DRaaS to be DRaaS, the target must be a cloud. Yes, you can use the same tools DRaaS providers use to replicate your virtual machines to one of your other data centers or colo. But I contend it is no longer DRaaS at that point. It is just DR using hypervisor level replication. You lose most of the benefits provided by DRaaS. When considering which cloud to target, there are two major categories: hosted clouds and hyperscale clouds or public clouds. Hosted clouds range from small boutique cloud providers to those whose scale is larger but not as large as the hyperscale providers like AWS, Azure, or Google. Hosted clouds may also be referred to as enterprise clouds by some providers. Many times, the hosted cloud provider is also the provider of the DRaaS service. Typically, these clouds are based on commercially available hypervisors like VMware and Hyper-V. Hyperscale clouds include AWS, Azure, Google, and others. When it comes to DRaaS targets, the most common are AWS and Azure. Both can provide the tools to replicate into their clouds. However, they stop short of providing the as-a-service part of disaster recovery as a service. You will need a third party to be your service provider when targeting the hyperscale clouds. As we consider the pros and cons of A, using a cloud as a target, and B, which cloud to target, keep in mind, like the RTO RPO discussion earlier, this is not a one-size-fits-all proposition either. You may find yourself using different targets for different workloads, or you may find yourself using multiple targets for the same workload. We've already discussed some of the benefits you will realize by using DRaaS for your disaster recovery strategy, such as a recovery target that you don't need to maintain or keep updated. It works, guaranteed. Offloading work to a third party. And failback. Additionally, you will recognize a lower total cost of ownership when compared to maintaining like-for-like environments in production and in DR. The amount of lower TCO that you experience will be based on the tiering of your applications and whether you choose a hosted cloud or a hyperscale cloud. Leveraging a cloud as your target can also provide you with greater geographic separation between your production workloads and your recovery target. You may recall from my story in episode 1, we had multiple data centers. However, they were located within the same geographic region so that when the blizzard hit, it took out power in both locations. When deciding which clouds to target, it begins with your cloud strategy. You do have a cloud strategy, don't you? If in your cloud strategy you have plans to migrate some or all of your workloads into AWS, for example, you should investigate the options for using AWS as a target in your DRaaS solution. On the other hand, if a hosted cloud is part of your cloud strategy, then look to that cloud as your primary target. In any case, aligning your replication targets with your long-term strategy can pay dividends by providing a less critical place for your team to learn how your applications will behave in the cloud. During your DR tests, a copy of your production environment will be brought up in the cloud. It will be segregated from your true production environment, allowing you to run simulations, regression tests, stress tests, and more against it. This will help your team learn cloud. It will also help you identify applications that may need to be refactored to run efficiently and effectively in the cloud. Some of you may be feeling pressure from your CEO and other executives to get to the cloud. Implementing DRaaS can be a way to show a quick win without jeopardizing your production environment. While a DRaaS project can take weeks or months to implement, it is far faster than a full cloud migration. Another benefit you will see from aligning your cloud strategy with your DR strategy is a faster cloud migration when you are ready. In the episode As a Service at Your Service, I tell the story of our decision to leverage DRaaS as our disaster recovery strategy. What we experienced in our very first test convinced us a hosted cloud was the way to go for our production environments as well. Even though our DR site was halfway across the country from our headquarters, our business colleagues experienced far faster response time when they were testing in our DR environment than they experienced in our production environment that was sitting down the hall from them. We made the decision to migrate to an infrastructure as a service offering from the same cloud provider. Because they already had our data, our time to migrate was significantly reduced. They replicated our DR environment to one of their other data centers with no impact to our production workloads. Once everything was ready, we failed over into our new production environment. Some of the other points to consider when choosing which clouds to target for your replication might include the geographic diversity of the cloud provider. The hyperscale clouds have data centers all over the world. If you are a global company, this could be the factor that tips the scales to AWS or Azure. Many countries have data sovereignty laws that require the data to stay in country. Choosing a provider whose footprint aligns with yours would be crucial in these cases. If you are a shop that has a lot of non-x86 workloads, you will want to work with a provider who can help design and implement a solution that protects those workloads as well. They can help you determine if targeting one cloud for all of your workloads is the best option, or if you should consider a multi-cloud strategy of replicating your x86 workloads to a hyperscale cloud and your non-x86 workloads into a hosted cloud. As we saw in the previous discussion about application tiering, there was a trade-off between cost and recovery times. This is also the case when deciding which cloud to target for your replication and recovery. Recovering your workloads in one of the hyperscale clouds will impact your recovery time. Your recovery time will be somewhat longer in AWS and Azure than it will be in a hosted cloud that is based on the same hypervisor you use in production. This overhead is caused by the conversion that must take place from your hypervisor to the hypervisor used by the hyperscale cloud. AWS uses a proprietary hypervisor, and Azure uses a version of Hyper-V that is different from the commercially available versions. The trade-off for these somewhat slower recovery times is cost savings. Storage costs while you are in a replication state can be significantly lower than in the hosted clouds. This is especially true for the lower tiers of applications that can be moved to cold storage until a recovery is needed. In our next webcast, BAS, Not Your Grandfather's Backup, we will discuss some of the options available to you. In the fourth webcast, Clear Expectations, we will provide you with some guidance for setting expectations with your business colleagues when it comes to recovery time objectives and more. If you missed our first episode in this series, As a Service at Your Service, we talk about as-a-service strategies, including DRaaS and BaaS, and the advantages this technology brings to you. I encourage you to watch it today. There will be a link in the show notes. Before we end this episode, I would be remiss if I did not provide an overview of InterVision and our award-winning DRaaS and BaaS solutions. If you are on a cloud journey or contemplating one, the numbers that jump out to me as a former CIO are the 200 plus technical cloud certifications held by the 125 certified engineers. This speaks to the depth and breadth of our expertise. At InterVision, we live at the intersection of the right premises, the right technology, and the right model. Right for you. It is that intersection that enables our transformative approach so that you can realize your strategic IT vision. Our DRaaS solutions are backed with the industry-recognized Recovery Assurance Process. It is this process that enables you to sleep well at night knowing your data are protected. It begins with your business requirements, continues with joint engineering, and then enters the iterative cycle of test, update, test, and update. We extend this assurance to provide you with resiliency and availability from, anywhere to anywhere. On-premises to on-premises. On-premises to hosted. Hosted to hosted. On-premises to public cloud. Public cloud to public cloud. Cloud availability options. No matter your recovery objectives and budget, we have a solution to meet your needs. DRaaS Run for those workloads that need to be recovered in seconds. DRaaS Ready for those important workloads that are needed within 4 to 8 hours. And DRaaS Restore for those valuable workloads that can sustain an outage as long as 24 to 48 hours. We do this not only on our own hosted cloud, but also to AWS and Azure. Our BaaS solutions provide you with low-cost cloud backups of your precious data. These backups can be stored in AWS, Azure, or in our hosted cloud. In our next episode, BaaS, Not Your Grandfather's Backup, we will dive into recent advances in backup technology, including backing up to the cloud. Until next time, this is Jeff Tunn, InterVision's Strategic IT Advisor. Thank you very much for listening.